two central points of Sibur Yetzias Mitzrayim. So he said one was the whole idea of Kiddush, and that's Ata v'chartonim and Kol Amim, you chose us from all the nations, Havto Yisanu v'Ratzisa Banu, and that's the whole idea of the Yomim Tovim in general, is the process of becoming Klal Yisrael. And part of the process of becoming Klal Yisrael, the first part of the process of becoming Klal Yisrael was, the biggest part was Yetzias Mitzrayim. So that was one element of Sibur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that was what we said was the whole idea of Kiddush. And the second one was that we said that Yetzias Mitzrayim is the yesod of our Amunah. Before Yetzias Mitzrayim, I'll just read an interesting Ramban quickly. Before Yetzias Mitzrayim, he says like this: now I'll tell you a rule for the reason for many mitzvahs. Hine, from the time there was avodah zarah in the world, so there was a bunch of different types of people. Some people felt like the world is fresh, had no creator. Some people said there was a creator, but he doesn't know what's going on down here. Some people said he knows, but he has no control, and there's no schar v'einish. It makes no difference what he says. There's a famous joke I heard a long time ago. A guy comes to court and he says, you broke my cup. So he says, listen, I have three defenses. First of all, I didn't borrow the cup. Second of all, if I borrowed the cup, but I returned it to you. And third of all, even if I didn't return it to you, but I broke it by mistake. So either way I win. So the idea is, either there's no Hashem, or if you want to tell me there is Hashem, but he doesn't know what's going on down here. And even if he knows what's going on down here, but he has no control. So comes along Hashem, and when Hashem wants to reveal himself, what does he do? He makes a moifus. And by making a moifus, he overturns something in the Bria, in the world, and he overturned all the rules of the Bria. It made the water stand up, and people could walk through, it made the fire and the water go together. And if it's preordained, then it shows something even more. Then it shows that Hashem is talking to us. There's nevuah. Because Hashem tells you, tomorrow I'm going to change around the whole thing, and you come and tell everyone, the whole world, and then it happens, right? So that's what happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim. Shamu Am Yergazun, the nations heard, Chil Achazeshe Pelashus, the whole world heard and saw that Hashem is the one who created the world, and that Hashem controls the world, and that Hashem is involved with the world. And that's what the point of Sibur Yetzias Mitzrayim is. Now, and then he goes on to say, Hashem's not going to do it all the time. Every 5 minutes, every time a guy wants to believe that Hashem created the world, he's going to come and redo everything. So Hashem did it once, and then he commanded us to remember it and pass it on to our children, and our children should pass it on to their children. And that's how Hashem will one time show that he created the world. So that was the two ideas. One idea of Sibur Yetzias Mitzrayim is that Hashem took us and made us his nation. And the other idea is that Hashem showed that the Yesod HaEmunah, that he showed that he controls the world. So I said a share a few weeks ago, and it says like this: Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Yitzicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Right? That's like the foundation of Kol HaTorah Kula, the first of the Aseret Adibros. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Yitzicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. So there's a famous question that's asked: why does it say Asher Yitzicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim? Why doesn't it say Asher Barashi Shemayim V'Aretz? Even more than Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, he created the whole world. There's a couple different answers given, but really what we're saying over here, these two things are two of the answers. One answer is, because how do we know Hashem created Shemayim V'Aretz? Maybe he didn't. Okay, so we believe it, but how do we know? Where did we see with our eyes that Hashem created Shemayim V'Aretz? Because from Yetzias Mitzrayim, where we saw that Hashem rules over the whole world, and we saw that Hashem could change it, so that shows us that Hashem created the world. That shows us that Hashem was Brasha Shemayim V'Aretz. So what's he going to come tell us? I created Shemayim V'Aretz? How do you know? But I took you out of Mitzrayim. That you saw. Be'einecha, you saw. And how do we know? Because it was passed on to us. If anyone wants to see a nice video about how do we know today? How do we know it's passed on? So I can send it to them if they request afterwards. But the idea is it's passed on to children after children. So that's the first part. Why Meretz Mitzrayim and why not Brasha Shemayim V'Aretz? Because this we saw, this we could see, and this we know. The other one is because I took you out of Mitzrayim based on Vodim. It says like this: Elokecha, I'm your God. Because Brasha Shemayim V'Aretz was for the whole world. But Asher Tzichem Eretz Mitzrayim, I took you out in Beis Avodim. That's when you became Klal Yisrael. That's when you became my chosen people, my Mamlechas Kohanim for Goy Kodesh. So that's the idea of, those are the two of the main focus points of the Simcha of Pesach and the whole Simcha of what we're doing. And we said even that's what we daven, Shelo Yasani Goy, Asher B'chabon Mikolam, he chose from a nation, right? V'naslonas Terase, Atav Chaton Mikolamim, the whole Yom Tov davening and the whole Yom Tov tefillah is that Hashem chose us. And the Mitzrayim is the Yesod HaEmunah, and that's the sort of the two of the central themes of the night. That's just a review from last week. So starting off this week, I'd like to get into the words of the Haggada a little bit and go through, starting from the beginning. So I don't know if anyone was here last year, but the way I like to do it, just to is to take a couple of minutes now. We'll try it. It's a little bit of a bigger crowd, but we'll take a couple of minutes and maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and just to look over from page 24 through page 26, Shal Shachos. So maybe take like 4 or 5 minutes. If you could take a partner, even, it's even better, and just look it over, just review it so it's like sort of fresh, and also try to analyze it a little bit, like ask questions, think in your head, like, why do we do this? Why do we say this? Why like this? Why not like that? Just do it fast. And then what I used to do last year was we'd gather up the questions, but I don't know if I'll have enough time, so I'll just say over, I'll try to go a little bit quicker, and I'll say over some of the questions, and I'll try to say one main point. And the main point will be this concept of, just so you have a chance to look ahead, this concept of, the kids know the story already, so what are we doing here tonight? Try to focus on that question. Everyone knows it already. We know the story already, right? So what are we doing again? Every year, the same thing. What are we doing? The kids just learned to do school. What are they doing? So we'll talk about that. So 4 minutes on the clock. There's a beautiful thought from a Dessler. Lichtem Elio. If anyone wants to see it, it's in Chelik Daled. It's on page 249. And he's talking about a concept like this. He's talking about how... Okay, let's start from the beginning. It goes like this. He starts off like this. He says, Haggada Shel Pesach was set up by the Gedolei Chachmei Torah, by the Gedolim Chachamim, right? In order that through the words of the Haggada, this is exactly what you should do, when you should do it, the order of how to do it, right? This is how to be Mekayim the mitzvah of the Gato Levincha properly. And therefore, from here, he wants to say like this: from the Haggada, it is a shir on chinuch, and from the Haggada, you can learn how to do chinuch. Why? Because, however, Chazal, the whole point of the Haggada is to pass on the Messiah. So if Chazal put certain things in there, that means that those things are ways of making something, teaching a child. So he points out some examples. So I'm just going to say the concepts and then we'll go into the Haggada quickly. But he says there's something called, you're supposed to teach through questions and answers, right? Every time, almost always, when a person gets up and says a Dvar Torah, so in the Jewish world, what do they say? They read a pasuk or something, and almost always they'll ask a question. Why does it say like this? Why does it do this? Whatever. Something doesn't make sense. And then they say an answer. Right? Even now, how we sort of did it was come up with a question, think of the questions yourself, and then we'll try to say answers. And the concept of that is when you teach through questions and answers, questions awaken people's minds. Questions make people start to think, and they start to inquire, and then it's not the same thing. If I just get up and I read the pasuk and I say, here's the pshat, it doesn't have the same effect as if I first ask a question, it doesn't make sense, and then I teach it. So one teaching method that you learn from the Haggada is derech she'ela tshuva. But even more than that, uve'ikar hatzorach la'or she'elos mitzad hayeled. You want to get the child to ask. It's one thing when you ask the question and the person hears the question, so they start to wonder, and then you say the answer. But then there's a whole different level when you get the child himself to be, hey, what's going on over here, right? And then he starts asking, why do we do this? Why do we do that? Now tell him the answer. It's a whole different thing. He's listening. He's interested. He's curious because he wants to know. What? I once went I used to teach if anyone read the handbook, the Carl's handbook, if anyone read it. So I started my teaching career, says the first, the handbook, I started in Camp Haggada. So I had a shir in Camp Haggada. It was about 11 kids, and there was all different levels over there. And it was very difficult to say the shir. So the next year I was with my grandfather. For those who don't know, he used to be the principal of Eitz Chaim, and we went to the Torah Masorah convention. And at the Torah Masorah convention, I decided to go around and ask people, like, how do you teach a class? I had some kids who would prepare and they knew it, and these guys were amazing. They were asking me kashas like they were good guys. And then I had some kids who were, they weren't so interested. It was summer. It was hard. I didn't know how to say a class for them. So I started to ask them. I got all these different techniques. But the one who answered me that I like the best, his name is Rabbi Aaron Kaufman. He's the Rosh Yeshiva of Waterbury. And he told me we should do it like this. Start off with a very interesting question. Start off with a very good question. That will get everyone interested. Then what you do is like this. Say, okay, let's start from the beginning now. Got to go back to the basics. We'll work our way up to the question, right? So you start off with that good question. Now everyone's listening. Then you say, okay, let's read the Gemara inside. So you read the basics. Now, the guys who weren't so interested, they're not so smart or they're not so prepared, so they're hearing the basics, right? Let's go through the Rashis. Let's go through the Tosfos. And meanwhile, the good guys, they know it already, but they're listening because they want to hear how you're using this to build up towards the answer. And then maybe, let's say, the last 10 minutes when you want to say your hard part, so maybe the guys who didn't prepare and don't know, that you might lose them, but at least everyone's listening for 50 minutes, and then you say a good part for the better guys. So I tried it, and Taco worked, amazing. So the idea is that what you do is you get people involved through questions. And even better than getting people involved through questions is you get them to ask. So that's the first part. I'm going to show you in a few minutes how this part of the Haggada, we do a bunch of these different things. Okay. The Chen Inin Hamchasha. Hamchasha is like the senses. So nowadays, we know in teaching, they have these things called visual aids, right? PowerPoint presentation. Well, no, when I went to school, we had just signs, or they drew on the blackboard, right? When you went to school, I don't know what they had, but so they have visual aids, right? And that's what we do. We do matzah zu, you point to the matzah, right? Mar zeh, you point to the mar. You see it, you feel it. That's another concept. A third concept, Siyurim Chaim. Siyurim Chaim is you apply it to yourself. You imagine it. So imagine yourself. A person should look at himself as if he himself went out of Mitzrayim. Let's say you're telling someone about the Holocaust or about the Spanish Inquisition. So try to imagine yourself living as a Marano, right? That's how you talk. That's how you teach concepts. Try to make them feel it. Try to make it real. If Hashem would not have taken us out, we would still be there. This applies to us. If someone saved your grandfather or your great-grandfather's life, he saved your life. Then he goes through some other ones. Maybe we'll save for the end when we get up to that. He calls this V'hainu Pedagogia al Pi Torah. This is teaching seminary from the Torah. If you want to know where did Chazal teach us how to teach, it's in the Haggada. And it is very interesting because a lot of the techniques are used nowadays. And maybe weren't used so much 50 years ago. They're much more used now. They're starting to understand now concepts of visual aids, the concepts of getting the kids involved, the concepts of trying to make it feel real by applying it to them. Fine. So that's the idea. That's a very interesting idea of that guy. But now he says something very powerful. He asks like this. And we're going to see, for those who just looked it over, we already said a lot of the points over here, a lot of the main points I want to bring up, but we're going to see that there's a concept of afilu kulanu chachamim, kulanu nevainim, kulanu zakenim, kulanu yadnes haTorah, mitzvah sabri tzis mitzvayim. There's a concept that even if you know it already, even if you know the whole Torah, you still mitzvah sabri tzis mitzvayim. So he asks, and the Gemara says also, if someone doesn't have a wife, he has to ask himself. If you're sitting by a seder by yourself, you're somewhere alone, or you're not married and you're alone, you have to ask yourself, Manashtana. If you have two Talmidei Chacham together, there's no one else there, they have to ask Manashtana. They do questions and answers. They have to do all the same questions and answers. They point to the matzah, they point to the mar. The kasha. How could you give the same nusach, an equal nusach, for a child and for a chacham? What does he have to ask himself for? This is an interesting question, right? The same thing for a child, for a chacham, same exact lashon. She says a very interesting point over here. Ava atamhu mishum shememitzas halayla he lahashav. This, one second. This is basically what we're asking, right? This is the question that we're asking, and this is one of the fundamental questions of the Seder night is, what are we doing here? We know the story already. We heard the story enough times. What are we doing? And maybe you'll tell me the point is to pass it on to your children, which is true, but is that the only point? Is there any point for myself? And the proof that that's not true is it's only for the children is what happens if you don't have children? What happens if you're by yourself? You still have to do the exact same thing. So what's going on? We know it already. Even someone who knows the whole Torah, yesterday he reviewed everything. So that's the question that he's coming to answer, right? This key question. About Tamhu. The mitzvah of the night is to take the truth of Yetzias Mitzrayim and to get it into your heart. Even if your brain, your seichel is a chacham, that means he knows everything. Halev hi am haaretz. Your leiv is am haaretz. Listen to this. V'gam yaldus yesh ba. Your leiv is an inner child. It's a child. V'hashavas ha'emes al halev, and the way to get truth into someone's heart, not into a mind. Into a mind, I sit you down, let's have an intellectual talk, one-on-one, here's the way it is, fine, now I know. But then you have the guy goes and whatever, right? That's your intellect. Your intellect maybe a chacham. The way to talk to intellect is with logic. But the way to talk to the leiv, hashavas ha'emes al halev, it's the same way you talk to a child. It's dereshes. Oisei haloshain, the same language. Oisei signa, the same style. Mamish k'may haloshain v'asigna b'hem as b'yom liyah, the way you talk to a child. And that's why the chacham has to go and look at the matzah and say matzah zeh. And the chacham has to say mar zeh. And the chacham has to do derech she'elo tshuva. And the chacham has to do tziyurim chaim for himself. If I would have been, if Hashem would have taken us out, I would still be in Mitzrayim. I would still be in Egypt, right? And it says, "Zeh klal gadol ba'avodas Hashem." It's a klal gadol ba'avodas Hashem. Hashavas ha'emes el halev is a whole different story than intellect. There's intellect, and then there's nowadays, I don't know, maybe it's called the subconscious. There's making it hit your leiv, making it real. That's the concept that Rav Dessler says. So this is kind of one of the foundations of the whole shir that I try to give is this concept. That the point of Yetzias Mitzrayim, just to, Tziyurim Chaim, we're supposed to give examples in our lives. So, an example is something called, what we call ambiance, right? You could have, even let's talk about this shir, right? So, I don't know, for me it's much easier to say this shir this week than it was last week. It's only because of how it's set up. Last week it was just like, we didn't know what was going to happen. It wasn't set up properly. So, but let's take, you have a steak, right? So, you have a steak, you have it at home on your kitchen table, paper plate, the bag's still there from the store, right? You got your paper bag there. Okay, it's good. It's a good steak, but Lamaisa, it's on paper with plastic and your bag's still there. Or you go to this fancy restaurant and there's waiters and there's music playing and the perfect decor with the tablecloths and the setup, and there's a whole ambiance, there's a whole feeling that's created and that surrounds the whole experience, and it makes it's a different thing. It's experiential. You experience it differently based on the whole ambiance and the whole setup. And I said this over last year also, but I saw that I have a sefer at home, Rabbi Yashaber, Rabbi right from YU, from Rabbi Soloveitchik. So there's a whole piece about the two greatest nights of the year. Very interesting, about what are the two greatest nights of the year, Yom Kippur and Yetzias Mitzrayim. And I'm not so familiar with his writings, but it seems like he's a very emotional, like he's talking about, he remembers walking and the moon, and he remembers the whole feeling. There's an avirah, there's a feeling on those nights that you come home and hopefully the table's set with fancy china and all the muksa's put away and the father's treated like a king and he sits up front and some people wear a kittel. There's a whole feeling, there's a whole experience, and there's many, many different ingredients that Chazal put into the Haggada, like we're seeing from Reb Dessler, that Chazal put into Haggada all these different ingredients to make you feel it, to make you experience it. And the point is to make it real, to make it hit your heart, to experience it. And the emphasis is that we're all supposed to experience a personal Yetzias Mitzrayim. The words of the Haggada are supposed to be the vehicles to feel a personal Yetzias Mitzrayim, going ourselves from Avdus to Chayrus, which brings us, just the picture of the whole Hallel, the picture of the whole Haggada is, you're supposed to go on a personal journey through the story of Avdus, to feel it, through the story of going through Chayrus, to brings you to Hallel and Haggada and a Simcha to Hashem. That's the point of the night. And Chazal, they were masakin throughout the night many different things which make it feel real and make it feel like it hits you, and that's kind of the whole point of how they set up the Seder. So that's Hakdama to what we're going to say over here, and that's really the main idea. So let's take a look start with the beginning of Magid, how it goes. So right before Magid was Yachatz. And Yachatz, what do we do by Yachatz? We broke the middle matzah. Break the middle matzah, put one away for the afikomen, and you leave a part over here. Okay, that's Yachatz. Now Magid starts off, and the art scroll brings down over here. By the way, a common mistake that people make is that you skip the little things. But remember, everything that we do, the little words, the broken matzah is lifted. No, but the middle words. The broken matzah is lifted for all to see. These are halachas in Shulchan Aruch. And every single halacha, everything that we do by the Seder, there's a reason for it. It has meaning, and it's discussed in the Rishonim and Achronim. There's meaning for it, and there's tremendous importance to every part. So the broken matzah is lifted for all to see. It's very interesting. I don't know why, but in the Shulchan Aruch, it's brought down that you lift the whole ka'ara. And some people have a ka'ara which is separated from the matzahs. Some people have the ka'ara where the matzahs are underneath the ka'ara. So the idea over here is to pick up at least the matzahs, because what you're saying is halach ma'anya. You pick up the bread. What's that? A visual aid. You pick up the matzah and you show it, and you say halach ma'anya. This is the bread of affliction, the achalu avasana b'ayid mitzrayim, that our fathers ate in Mitzrayim. So the beginning of just simple pshat over here, and obviously, by the way, just to point out that for the record, there's obviously many, many different pshatim in everything, but I'm just going to try to do a very simple, try to do a smooth pshat that sort of flows, just to pick one. So many people learn that what you're saying is you pick up the middle matzah and you show this is the bread of affliction that we ate. Now, a side point that we're going to get back to at the end of the Haggada is, did they eat matzah in Mitzrayim? Because we're saying this is the bread of affliction that we ate in Mitzrayim. Is it true that we ate matzah in Mitzrayim? So it's a very interesting shot. We'll come back to it at the end of at the end of the Haggada, at the end of Magid. When we talk about matzah, what do we say? Matzah zu shanu oichlem al shumma. Why do we eat matzah? Because when they left Mitzrayim, the dough didn't have enough time to rise, and that's why we eat matzah, right? So is it because when they left Mitzrayim they ate matzah, or did they eat matzah in Mitzrayim? What's the significance of matzah, and what is matzah? So Mitzvah Shem will talk about that at the end, and we'll get up to matzah zu. Whoever's still here, it's a little preview. But anyways, so whether we ate matzah or not, so what does it mean it's lechem oini, especially if we didn't eat matzah? So what does it mean lechem oini? So there's a couple of reasons why matzah is called lechem oini. One reason is because ma darko shal ani beprusa. So also over here we eat it broken. The way of an ani is he eats pieces for one of two reasons. Either that's all he could get, the scraps, or because when they have a whole matzah, they break it in half. You save one part for later, and you save one part now. That's all they have. They have this little bread, so they eat each piece, and they save the pieces. They never get a chance to have a whole piece. So that's called, that's what the article says, you lift the broken matzah, you say, halach ma'anya. Also, it's low, it's lechem ani, it's low, didn't have a chance to rise. So matzah symbolizes poor man's bread, whether we ate it in Mitzrayim or not. So we say this is the poor man's bread in Mitzrayim. And then we take this opportunity to invite anyone who needs the meal. We say, Kol dichvin, anyone who's hungry, Yeshiv Yechel, should come and eat. Kol ditzrich, anyone who needs of Pesach, Yeshiv Yechel, should come and celebrate Pesach. So we're inviting the poor people. The interesting question is, which poor people? Right? With the Seder's here, table set, everyone's at the thing, doors closed. Anyone who's hungry, come and eat. I mean, who's listening? Who's going to come? Who are you inviting? So, the Avud Ram, there's a few other psadim, but the Avud Ram says they used to actually open their doors. And they would call out into the streets. And they used to live, he writes this, they used to live very close together. I mean, imagine if you lived in an apartment building nowadays. So it might not be so crazy. You open the door and you announce loud, anyone who's hungry, come and eat. People might actually hear you. If you live in a ghetto or you live crammed together, close all over, a lot of people close together, the Aniyim used to go and they used to wait outside people's doors, and when people would call out and say, Kol dichon, Yeshiv Yechel, they would come. It says like this, Rav Huna, the Gemara says, Rav Huna, ki have a karach rifta, when he would start eating, every time he started eating, he would say, Kol dichon, similar lashon, anyone who's hungry should come in. He would open his door and he would say. So it actually was an invitation to poor people to come and eat. It was a real invitation. So then the question becomes, so we look like hypocrites over here. You know, your kid turns to you and says, well, you're inviting guests. I mean, we're inviting. Very nice. So the answer to that is, what we do, and the Rambam says that any Sudas Yom Tov, which you did not either have aniyim, or what we do is we give Mos Chitim before Pesach. In most shuls, most communities have a Mos Chitim. Klal Yisrael has a minute before Pesach to give Mos Chitim. What we're doing is we're giving money to the poor people to be able to have a Pesach meal. So those people are really sort of like guests at our house. Instead, we can give them the cover; they can actually have the meal at their own house. But we're providing them either through Tomchei Shabbos, Mos Chitim, whatever. We provide them with money to have their meal. So
it's usually the first mitzvah of Pesach.
It's the first one that you do.
Yeah.
Mos Chitim, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the idea over here, that we say, it's important to maybe turn to your children and say that you shouldn't think that we're hypocrites over here. We do invite poor people, and there are sort of like there's poor people at our Seder because we provided them with the needs by giving them Mos Chitim. And then we say, so this year we're here, next year we should be in Eretz Yisrael, now we're slaves, next year we should be free. So what does that mean? Normally, you say Lashana Haba at this part, we say Lashana Haba at the end, right? After the whole thing, Lashana Haba, right? That's what we say Lashana Haba. We say in the beginning over here. So one answer, just to explain the whole thing, is we just did Yachat, so we just did that, shows us it's broken bread, it's poor man's bread, we lift up the bread, so this is poor man's bread, and what we do is we're talking to others, we say, well, we were all poor once. We were all poor once. We were all in Mitzrayim once. We were all poor. So come eat. Don't feel bad. And next year, Mitzrayim, we should all be in Yerushalayim. We should all be free. We should all be in Yerushalayim. So the whole paragraph then becomes an invitation to poor people to come eat. And we're starting off by showing them that we were all once poor. We're ending off and saying, like a bracha, that we should all be free. The idea of being in Eretz Yisrael and being free is two different things, because now we're in Eretz Yisrael also. But it's not freedom. We're under a secular government, and there's plenty of enemies all around. It's not freedom. We may be in Eretz Yisrael, but we're not free. So there's two steps. There's being in Eretz Yisrael, and then there's being free in Eretz Yisrael. So I just quickly said Halach Ma'anya without getting involved with the questions, because there are many, many questions on Halach Ma'anya, and it's very confusing. If anyone wants to take a look, you'll see that it's hard to make a connection between the three sentences. They each seem very separate. Okay, then. So then we do, the Seder plate is removed. So also this is a very important part of the Haggada, because this is how we get the child to ask. See, the problem is like this. What do we say in English? We say, okay, come say the Manashtana, right? In Yiddish, we say, come frag the Manashtana. There's a very big difference between saying questions and asking questions. And one of the problems is that the kids memorize the Manashtana in school. They're not really asking. They're more saying. So what we do is we take off the Seder plate. Why do we take off the Seder plate? And why did we do karpas earlier? What we're doing strange things. Imagine you come to Sheva Brachos, and they bring out the meal, they serve the meal, right? The Seder plate's the meal, they serve the meal, and then they're about to start the meal. Okay, clear off the plates. No one got a chance to eat yet. What's the first thing every single person at the table is going to do? What's going on over here? What are you doing? Why you just brought out the food? Why are you taking away the food, right? That's the idea. The Seder plate is removed, and the point is, so the children will ask. So the children will ask, what's going on? Why are you taking away the food? You just brought out the food. Why are you taking away the food? And that will lead them to ask the Manishtana, because what's the answer? What are you going to answer him? Taisus asks this kasha. What are you going to answer him? Well, we took away the Seder plate, so you'll ask. Right? It's a little circular logic. So he'll ask. He's going to ask, why did you take away the Seder plate? You're going to answer him, so you'll ask. Right? But the point is, because once someone starts asking, it wakes up his mind. Let me ask other questions. Let me ask anything weird you do in order just to get the kids to ask. So again, another thing is that what you want to do is you want to make that you're asking, what's going on? Tonight's weird. And this should be noticeable. You know, some people, they just move it a little bit. It should be a little bit noticeable. People should realize, like, or at least point it out, like, hey, we just brought out the food. Why is that got to tell us to take it right off? It should be pointed out. It should be noticed. So the kid himself, or you yourself, will start to say, this is weird. And then you start to ask the Manishtana. Fine. Now, quickly, Manishtana, how many questions is Manishtana? Is it 4 questions? Is it 1 question? So, also the way Manishtana is set up is also a very big tool for teaching. Because when you want to ask a question, the best way to ask a question is to contrast 2 things. So what we could have done was said like this: why do we eat matzah? Why do we eat maror? Why do we dip? Why do we lean? Now, in some families, every single kid says Mashar, all the grandchildren, right? Take a long time. It'll be a lot more geschmack, right? It'd be easier for the kids to remember. They could have remembered in Hebrew, Yiddish, English. It would be much easier. Why do we dip? Why do we lean? Why do we matzah? Why do we mar? That's it. That's not what it says, right? It's much longer. First, it starts off with a general question. Why is tonight different? And then we show the contrast. Because on all other nights, this is what we do. And on tonight, look, it's so different. Look, tonight we do, it's so different. We eat matzah. On all other nights, we eat whatever vegetables we want. Look, it's so different. Tonight, we eat mar. So we're showing the contrast. On all other nights, we don't have a minute to dip. That answers your question, David. We don't have a minute to dip. There's no requirement to dip. Tonight, we dip twice. On all other nights, we don't lean. Tonight, we all lean. So that's also, it's a way of showing it. But what I'm trying to say also is, it's really one question. The question is, why is tonight different from all other nights? If you look in the Ark Scroll, you see where the question mark is. I don't know if you want to be medayik with the Ark Scroll's question marks. I don't think it's from the Nusach Haggada, but the Ark Scroll puts a question mark. There's only one question mark. The question is, why is the night different from all other nights? And then there's 4 differences that we show. Here's one difference. On other nights we eat matzah and chametz, and on Pesach we only eat matzah. 4 differences, 4 contrasts, to show how different tonight is. But this, according to this pshat, I'm not able to get into all the diukim over here, but according to this pshat, answers the other question, another very important question, which is, what's the answer? Why do we dip? Anyone know why we dip twice? Nobody knows. The answer is, so you'll ask. That's the reason. At least that's the Pasha reason. There's other reasons given, but that's the Pasha reason in the Gemara, so you'll ask. Why do we eat matzah? It doesn't say why we eat matzah. Why do we eat maror? You missed why do we lean? It doesn't say over here why we lean. The reason why we lean is there are chayros. We know why we lean, but it doesn't say it over here. So how do you answer the questions? There's 4 questions, there should be 4 answers. And it should answer the questions. There are no 4 answers. There's only one question. And the question is a very basic shot. There's only one question. The question is, why is tonight different? And for that, there's one answer. Because Avodim Ayinu L'Farav Mitzrayim, Hashem, we were Avodim to Farav Mitzrayim, and Hashem took us out. One answer. Tonight's different because on this night, we were slaves and Hashem took us out. One answer to one question. If you say there's 4 questions, there's no answers. Doesn't answer any of the questions. Doesn't say why you eat matzah, doesn't say why you eat chametz, why you eat maror, doesn't say why you dip, doesn't say why you lean. None. Now, just quickly, the small words. The Seder plate is returned. Well, they were returned because the whole reason it was taken off was just to last, which we've accomplished. The matzahs are kept uncovered. The reason why the matzahs are uncovered is very important. Another shot in lechem oini is lechem she'oinim olav dvarim harbe. Lechem that you say out of words. And just like there's a concept, I don't know if we understand 100%, there's a concept of you make a koshal bracha, you say kiddush al hakois, right? Or when you do sheva brachas, you make it al hakois. So you say certain things with a cup. Haggada is supposed to be said al hamatzos. And that's why the whole time you say the Haggada, the matzahs are uncovered. Because the matzah lechem she'oinim olav dvarim harbe. You're supposed to say words on them. That's why the matzahs are uncovered. So what do we say? We say Avanu Mayinu for our Mitzrayim, and Hashem took us out. Now we show Tziyurim Chaim. We make it real. The evil Lord said, "Gosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, Hashem would have taken us out. We'd still be there. We'd still be stuck in Mitzrayim. Why would we be stuck in Mitzrayim? Going a little quickly, but why would we still be stuck in Mitzrayim? Who says? Maybe we would have got out. There's a few different possibilities. One possibility is psychologically. The slave mentality it's not something that a slave himself can't break out of slavery. Someone who is born into captivity, that's what they get used to. You have this concept when people get let out of jail after many, many years, very often they do crimes to get themselves back in, or they can't live in freedom. They don't know how to live as a free person because they're so used to being told when they can do everything. The concept of a slave mentality is you become an eved. A different shot was that Mitzrayim was so hard to break out of that no one could ever break out. And the third shot was, had we been there any longer, we would have been on so low in the level of tumah that we would have just got lost. So just quickly, that's a physical shot, you couldn't get out. A spiritual shot, we would have been lost. Or a psychological shot, that psychologically we would not have been able to get out. And then we say, it's a mitzvah on us to be mesaber b'tzis Mitzrayim. Why? Because being mesaber b'tzis Mitzrayim is not about only knowledge, it's about re-experiencing. And therefore, no matter how much you know, no matter how much you understand, there's a mitzvah to be mesaber, to re-experience. And what does it mean? It's a mitzvah to be mesaber. So how much do I have to say? We were slaves by Mitzrayim, we came out. The more you talk, the greater you make it real, the more meshubach you are. And that's the story with the Belezer B'Shur, Belezer B'Nazar, B'Kiva B'Tarfin. It proves two things. Number one, it proves that even Kulanu Chachamim, Kulanu Zekanim, Kulanu Nevanim, Kulanu Yez Torah, these great Tanaim, even they stayed up a whole night speaking about it. Because no matter how great you are, there's still mitzvah sabbath mitzvah. And they did it a whole night because it proves the whole marvelous safra is the meshubach. The more you do it, the better you are. So that's a quick overview of the first part of the Haggada. Next week we're going to skip the four sons and we'll start with Mitchila. If anyone wants to look it over.